But
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as always, it is an honor to enter into the important debates that are taking place in Canada's House of Commons. And before I get into my remarks, I would like to note that I am splitting my time with my honourable colleague and friend from the riding of Selkirk, Interlakes, Eastman. Madam Speaker, as you know, things can change quickly and develop quickly in this job that we all have as members of Parliament, which led me to be making a speech from a little bit of a unique location, having seemingly come down with the flu over the weekend. I was delayed in my return to our nation's capital, and as a result, my flight, I wasn't able to get on my normal Sunday afternoon flight, which would make the what is normally my commute, and therefore I am in a little bit of a unique location that, if you would indulge me, Madam Speaker, I'd like to highlight for just a moment. I am doing a speech from another chamber, actually, the Town Council chambers of the community of Drumheller, one of the many communities, the second largest community that I am proud to represent here in Battle River Crowfoot in this beautiful area in East Central Alberta. And I appreciate the community as I'm actually on my way to the airport here this morning, their generosity and hospitality that the Mayor, Council, and staff here have provided so that I could give this speech on what is an incredibly important subject. Now, just to note, Madam Speaker, if you would indulge me, many people, when they ask where I represent, I talk about East Central Alberta, describe the region to which I have the honor of representing, and affectionately refer to it as God's country. But when it comes to people really looking at where I represent, I can often refer to them to dinosaurs, because that is where about 500,000 people a year from across our country and around the world, they come to Drumheller to see the dinosaurs, whether that is the world's largest Tyrannosaurus Rex, Tyra, who is towering over my shoulder here just down the street, or the Royal Tyrrell Museum, many of the other tourist attractions that are focused around dinosaurs in the community of Drumheller, or the rich history that exists in this area, from the Badlands, things like the hoodoos, to the region's mining and agricultural history. Certainly the Drumheller Valley and the work that is done to ensure that this is a world-class tourism destination is something that I'm certainly proud of, proud to be the representative of this incredible place, and it's kind of a neat opportunity to be speaking from their council chambers here today. And again, I would thank Mayor Kohlberg and the Town Council and everybody in the community of Drumheller for their hospitality as I speak about this concurrence motion, but highlight how this incredible community and the hard work that they do to make sure that this is a great place to live, work, raise a family, and of course, be a visitor. And I would just note, before I get into the substance of my remarks as well, that this community is undergoing a massive infrastructure project that includes significant climate mitigation funding, including from the federal government. So I know the federal government—
Have a point of order, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While I appreciate the member's speech, but up to this point, he hasn't once mentioned the Iranian people, the situation that is happening there. And if the Conservatives have moved this concurrence motion, it would behoove themselves to actually speak on the item.
I just one moment, please. So I just want to remind the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary that there is a bit of leeway, and that no doubt that the Honourable Member will get to the motion before the House, or the concurrence motion that's before the House, and on the report. Some of what the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary spoke about was more of a point of debate, and so I will allow the Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot to continue on with his speech, and just want to remind all members that when they're speaking to a specific issue that's before the House, it should be related to that issue, and that individual should be mentioning it. So the Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and certainly I always find it troubling how speaking about the communities in which we represent seems to be offensive to those within the Liberal Party. But when it comes to the issue that we are addressing here today, part of the reason why I brought up the rich history that exists in the community of Drumheller is because it has a rich Ukrainian diaspora, a melting pot, and it speaks to whether it's the mining or agricultural resources that we have here that speak to how this region has that very, very rich history to which we can all be incredibly proud of. And as we speak about the 11th report from the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, I think that it is that context to which I certainly bring these remarks today that is so very important. Now, I heard the Parliamentary Secretary earlier today dismiss how important this issue is, yet I would remind both this House and all Canadians watching that as we talk about the tragedy, the downing of Ukrainian International Airlines Flight PS-752 by the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, that it is a tragedy that touched so many Canadians. I know, Madam Speaker, that although this happened a number of years ago, the impact far and wide that this had over the breadth of our country, the number of personal connections that were made to my constituents, that it was astounding to see how that history of the people of Ukraine is so deeply connected with that of our country. And then, of course, the killing of Mahsa Amini by the basically the morality police in Iran, the absolute tragedy that represents to the Iranian people, and the fact that you have an instance where terrorists are more or less operating as a legitimate state arm of the Iranian government. And what I think, Madam Speaker, is incredibly troubling, as we have seen over the last number of years since I've been elected in 2019, is that Parliament has actually taken
couple of the parliamentary secretaries, if they want to have conversations, they should take it out, because an individual is presenting virtually. Means that, it is still interrupting the House here. So I just want to remind those honourable parliamentary secretaries they might want to take their conversation outside, because their voice are carrying it within the chamber. The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have no doubt that they are listening intensely to the words that I'm sharing. But, Madam Speaker, I would go on to say how Parliament has, in the midst of the minority circumstances to which we find ourselves in, has actually spoken quite clearly over the last 3 parliaments about how it is important to take a strong and consistent message to demonstrate Canada's commitment to support the Iranian people and to ensure that the types of terrorist activities to which the IRGC has shown themselves to be so willing to employ to further their political agenda. And, Madam Speaker, we see that in the 2 instances related to this motion here today, but Parliament has made it very, very clear. I believe there's been a number of votes, and it wasn't until just recently that the Liberals finally started taking some more concrete actions, although they seem to, in what is honestly a confusing word salad, continue to bring sanctions forward to those involved within the IRGC, defend their actions, but refuse to come outright and list them as a terrorist entity, when certainly Parliament has made it very clear, and as the supreme legislative authority in this country, it would behoove them, I would suggest, to listen to the will of Parliament to take that strong and firm action to stand up for the people that are suffering the consequences of the IRGC's terrorist-like actions. Madam Speaker, while the government has brought about sanctions, has taken some steps that are in the right direction, I think that it is troubling that they don't seem to be willing to go quite far enough, especially in the context when it comes to the downing of this Ukrainian Airlines, where you had 176 people tragically lose their life, including, Madam Speaker, 55 Canadians and I believe around 30 permanent residents, as well as a number of students and other individuals who had their lives, entire lives ahead of them. Those families had loved ones ripped from them without justification, without cause, and as a clear act of terrorism, something that was most definitely an attack on the peace and security of all of those involved. So, Madam Speaker, when we talk about the importance of this motion, Madam Speaker, the need to ensure that we do not allow the victims of these terrible actions to be diminished in the midst of the debate and dialogue that this place needs to have to stand up for what is sound and right in this world, so that we can continue to call out those terrorist actions like those of the IRGC, the Iranian Armed Forces, and the Iranian Guidance Control, and other Iranian intelligence organizations. And with that, Madam Speaker, I look forward to answering some questions.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm wondering if the member could provide his thoughts in regards to why it is that the Conservative Party has decided to take this very important issue and utilize it in the form of a concurrence motion, as opposed to designating it as one of their opposition days, where there would have been an opportunity to have a more thorough debate on the issue, a day-long debate with the ending of some form of a vote, I think, of where there would be more of a unanimous consent being formalized, or even possibly having the House leadership teams look at a take-note debate as opposed to just having a concurrence on a report.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it's interesting that the Parliamentary Secretary, I would hope, is aware that the government controls the legislative agenda, and that and especially in a minority parliament, it requires that the government does work, of course, with opposition parties. But when it comes to the bill that was scheduled for debate today and will be debated here in a couple of hours, as well as much of the legislation that they have attempted and in a few cases have been able to succeed. We have seen over especially the last two minority parliaments, and I know there's been some significant challenges, but we have seen a level of mismanagement when it comes to this House's legislative agenda that is absolutely astounding, and I would say, quite frankly, embarrassing. So when important issues come up, this House needs to address them, and to diminish the importance of this issue, Madam Speaker, I think is incredibly short-sighted and unfortunate. Is something that I would hope members of the Liberal Party would take pause and consider carefully how they have seemed to be willing to put their political interests before that of such important issues like that which we have moved concurrence on here today.
The Honourable Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise today as an opportunity to share the names of a family in my community that was impacted by the downing of the flight that we're talking about today. Ardalan, his wife Nulufur, and their son Kamyar. This debate today hits home for the Iranian community of Port Moody, Coquitlam, and more Belcarra, and also Port Coquitlam. This impacted our community. This impacted people in our community, a part of our community that the community loves. So I wanted to talk about family reunification, because that's what I hear about in my riding. I hear about the need for families to reunify. And I wanted to ask the member about the super visa, and if the Conservatives and the member agree that the super visa program that allows for family reunification, especially in times like this, can be enhanced.
Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And like the member from the NDP, so many of us have those connections with our constituencies and families that were devastated because of the downing of this flight. And when it comes to the immigration system, super visas, and the work that needs to be done, I find it that this has to be a concerted effort to bring about reforms to our system so that we can have that secure, compassionate, and efficient immigration system that I believe all Canadians expect. There is nothing compassionate about having, a 2 million person backlog for people waiting for answers as to whether or not they can come visit this country, come see loved ones, come here to start a new life. Madam Speaker, these things have to be addressed.
On a temps pour une brève question. The honourable member, l'honorable député de Drummond.
A brief question. The honourable member for Drummond. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for Battle River, Crowfoot, for his speech, and I hope he'll get better soon. I saw that he had an unusually hoarse voice. Now, an acquaintance in a former life of Iranian origin was in the military, but is now being refused a visa. What can we do to help blameless Iranian nationals to ensure that they don't fall under these measures that are being put into place for national security through no fault of their own? Brief answer, please.
For Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I certainly feel much better than I sound now. So I thank the member for the best wishes, and I apologize to the interpreters for a bit of a hoarse voice, as that seems to be the last thing to recover. The member makes a good point. There are those in countries that become victims as much as in some cases the victims of terrorism. Those who, in some cases, are drafted or pressed into service into armed forces and whatnot. And it is unfortunate when there are instances where those people who, even though they are trying to escape their country for a better life, are falling through those cracks. So absolutely, there has to be a path forward to ensure that we can and make sure that Canadians are secure. That has to be maintained, but to ensure that those who are victims as well are able to come find refuge in this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate.